Hello, dear friends. Hope everyone is fine. Dear children, may I ask you a question? If you are the monitor of your class, will you write your enemy's name first? Someone is nodding head. Sometimes we will write our enemies' names, but then we will rub because we know we should not behave like it, isn't it? Today you have a new story about two friends who had to decide what was more important, friendship and enmity, or a sense of what is right and what is wrong. The name of the story is Fair Play. The story is written by Dhanpat Rai Srivastava, but better known by his pen name Munshi Premchand. He was born in 1880, July 31st, and died in 1936, October 8th. He was an Indian writer famous for his modern Hindustani literature. He is one of the most celebrated writers of the Indian subcontinent and is regarded as one of the foremost Hindi writers of the early 20th century. He published his first collection of 5 short stories in 1907. His famous novels are Godhan, Karmabhumi, Gaban, Mansarovar, etc. Let's get into the story. This story is about the realization of two friends who understood the importance of justice and right things in life. Life made them realize that justice and right things are above everything, including friendship. Let me read the story. Jumman Sheikh and Algu Chowdhury were good friends. So strong was their bond of friendship that when either of them went away from the village, the other looked after his family. Both were greatly respected in the village. Looked after means take care. Here, Jumman Sheikh and Algu Chowdhury were true friends. Their relationship was very deep. They even took care of each other's families whenever one of them had to go out or away from the village. Both were respected for their loyalty and sincerity to each other. See the next paragraph. Jumman had an old aunt who had some property. This she transferred to him on the understanding that she would stay with him and he would look after her. The arrangement worked well for a couple of years. Then the situation changed. Jumman and his family were tired of the old relative. Jumman became indifferent to her as his wife, who grudged even the little food that the old lady wanted every day. She swallowed these insults along with her food for a few months, but patience has its limits. Here he became indifferent, that means lost interest in or did not care of. Then grudged. Grudged means gave unwillingly or felt angry or unhappy about giving. Swallowed these insults, that means tolerated. She tolerated everything. Jumman's aunt had some property which she transferred to his name. In return, she expected him to look after her. This settlement worked in her favor for 2 years. After that, Jumman and his family's behavior towards her changed. They were fed up with her. Jumman showed no interest in her. His wife gave her food unwillingly. She tolerated this misbehavior for a few days. Poor lady, isn't it? Then, see the next paragraph. One day, she spoke to Jumman. My son, it is now obvious that I am not wanted in your house. Kindly give me a monthly allowance so that I can set up a separate kitchen. My wife knows best how to run the house. Be patient, said Jumman shamelessly. This made his aunt very angry and she decided to take her case to the village panchayat. Obvious, its case is obvious. That means it's clear. Do you know what's allowance? Allowance means some share of money. When she could not bear any longer, she spoke to Juman. She said that she knew it clearly that nobody liked her in the house and she was unwanted. So it would be better if he could give her some amount of money on a monthly basis so that she could manage her kitchen independently. Juman shamelessly replied to her that his wife knew the house matters better. This kind of response made her angry and upset. She thought of taking the case to the village panchayat. Okay, what's going to happen? Let's see. For many days, the old lady was seen talking to the villagers, explaining her case and seeking their support. Some sympathized with her, others laughed at her, and a few others advised her to make it up with her nephew and his wife. At last, she came to Algu Chowdhury and spoke to him. You know, Chachi, Juman is my best friend. How can I go against him? Algu said. But is it right, my son, to keep mum and not say what you consider just and fair? Pleaded the old lady. Come to the panchayat and speak the truth, she said. Algu didn't reply, but her words kept ringing in his ears. So here, make it up means stop quarreling or come to an agreement with. Do you know what's the meaning of mum? Mum means quiet or silent. Then here the old lady spoke to the villagers, talked about every detail of the whole matter and asked for their help. Some people pitied her, sympathized her, some made fun of her, and some others suggested her to patch up with her nephew and his wife. Finally, she met Algu Chowdhury and had a word with him. Algu hesitated and said that it was not possible for him to go against his friend. Then old lady requested him and posed a question to him. She asked him if it was the right thing to keep quiet and not to speak anything for which he thought it was right. She further stressed him to come to the panchayat and speak for what was right. Algu didn't say anything, but her words kept bothering him. So let's move on to the second part of this story. The panchayat was held the same evening under an old banyan tree. Juman stood up and said, The voice of the panch is the voice of God. Let my aunt nominate the head panch. I will abide by her decision. Nominate means propose, suggest someone's name for something. Abide by means accept. Okay, the panchayat was arranged that evening itself under an old banyan tree. Juman said that the voice of the panch is of highest value and is next to God's voice. Saying this, he asked his aunt to suggest a head panch. He would accept whatever the decision would be. Then see the next one, next paragraph. The panch knows neither friend nor enemy. What do you say to Algu Chowdhury? The old lady announced. Fine, replied Juman, hiding his joy over this unexpected piece of luck. Chachi, you are aware of my friendship with Juman, said Algu. I know that, replied the aunt. But I also know that you will not kill your conscience for the sake of friendship. God lives in the heart of the panch, and his voice is the voice of God. And the old lady explained her case. Juman, said Algu, you and I are all friends. Your aunt is as dear to me as you. Now I am a panch. You and your aunt are equal before me. What have you to say in your defense? 3 years ago, began Juman, my aunt transferred her property to me. I promised to support her as long as she lived. I have done all I could. There have been a couple of quarrels between my wife and her, but I can't stop it. Now my aunt is claiming a monthly allowance from me. This is not possible. That's all I have to say. So here the word defense means protection. Conscience. Conscience means moral sense. What's going on? Let's see. The old lady declared that the punch is always impartial and unbiased. Juman, hiding his feeling of joy, showed his acceptance of the fact because Algu is Juman's best friend. Algu spoke to Chachi asking her if she was aware of his friendship with Juman. She replied that she was well aware and she also believed that he would not kill his inner voice for the sake of friendship, as that is the voice of God and God lives in the heart of the punch. With this, the old lady started telling every detail of the matter. Algu asked Juman to speak in his protection, making him aware that he and his aunt both were equal to him, as at present, more than a friend, he was sitting on the seat of a punch. Juman briefed that his aunt had transferred her property in his name 3 years back. In return, he gave her a word to look after her till the last breath of her life. Whatever he could do to support her, he did, but she and his wife fought with each other over some issues which he was unable to control and stop. Because of this reason, his aunt was asking for some amount of money from him on a monthly basis. This was not possible for him. Then see the next paragraph. Juman was cross-examined by Algu and others. Then Algu announced, "We have gone into the matter carefully. In our opinion, Juman must pay his aunt a monthly allowance or else the property goes back to her." What happened? Juman was inquired and posed questions over this by Algu and other people sitting there. After questioning, Algu declared that they had inquired everything with full care and in their views, Juman must pay monthly allowance to his aunt. Otherwise, the property would be given back to her. Now, the two friends were seldom seen together. The bond of friendship between them was broken. In fact, Juman was Algu's enemy and wanted his revenge. Seldom means rarely. After this, two of them were never seen together. Their friendship bond was over. They were no longer friends. Juman felt hurt and wanted to take revenge. Oh my God. Let's move on to the third part of this story. Days passed and, as ill luck would have it, Algu Chaudhry found himself in a tight spot. One of his fine pair of bullocks died and he sold the other to Samju Sahu, a cart driver of the village. The understanding was that Sahu would pay the price of the bullock in a month's time. It so happened that the bullock died within a month. Tight spot means difficult situation. After some time, unfortunately, Algu Chaudhry was caught up in a difficult situation. He had a pair of bullocks and one of them died. So he sold the other one to Samju Sahu, who was a cart driver in the village. They had a deal that Sahu would pay the price of the bullock within a month, but bullock died within a month. It's fate, isn't it? Then see the next paragraph. Several months after the bullock's death, Algu reminded Sahu of the money he hadn't yet paid. Sahu got very annoyed. "I can't pay you a penny for the wretched beast you sold me. He brought us nothing but ruin. I have a bullock, use it for a month, and then return it to me. No money for the dead bullock," he said angrily. Wretched, that means poor and unhappy. Many months passed and Algu asked Sahu to pay the money. Sahu was very offended. He spoke with anger that it was not possible for him to pay even a single penny for the poor animal which he sold him, because it brought him nothing but just ruin. In other words, bad days. Further, he offered him to take his bullock to use for a month and return, but he would not pay any money for the dead bullock. Then, Algu decided to refer the case to the Panchayat. For a second time in a few months, preparations for holding the Panchayat were made, and both the parties started meeting people seeking their support. Seeking means asking for, to make a request. So what happened? Now Algu decided to take the whole matter to the Panchayat. The Panchayat was being held twice in the time period of a few months. Both the parties started meeting people to ask for support and help. Okay. Then the Panchayat was held under the old banyan tree. Algu stood up and said, "The voice of the Panch is the voice of God. Let Sahu nominate the head Panch. I will abide by his decision." Nominate means recommend or to propose. Then the Panchayat was held under the old banyan tree. Algu stood up and declared that the voice of the Panch is the voice of God. In other words, the Panch had to be fair and just. With this declaration, he suggested Sahu to propose the head Panch. He also said that he would accept whatever would be the decision. Sahu saw his chance and proposed the name of Juman. Algu's heart sank and he turned pale. But what could he do? Sahu took it as an opportunity and suggested Juman's name. Algu felt disheartened and weak inside, but he was completely helpless. Poor one. The moment Juman became head Panch, he realized his responsibility as judge and the dignity of his office. Could he, seated in that high place, have his revenge now? He thought and thought. No, he must not allow his personal feelings to come in the way of speaking the truth and doing justice. As soon as Juman became head Panch, he understood the responsibility of the judge and the respect this office held. His inner voice forced him to think. He asked himself if it was the right thing to take revenge while being seated at such a high position. His higher voice, means inner call, didn't permit his personal feelings to overpower the way of justice and truth. Then both Algu and Sahu stated their cases. They were cross-examined and the case was considered deeply. Then Juman stood up and announced, "It's our opinion that Sahu should pay Algu the price of the bullock. When Sahu bought the bullock, it suffered from no disability or disease. The death of the bullock was unfortunate, but Algu cannot be blamed for it." Algu could not contain his feelings. He stood up and said loudly over and over again, "Victory to the Panchayat. This is justice. God lives in the voice of the Panch." Okay, here dignity means high rank or respect. Cross-examined. What's the meaning of cross-examined? That means questioned. Both Algu and Sahu spoke their matter and kept their view and concern before everyone. They were questioned and every small detail of the case was looked upon very minutely. After hearing everything, Juman stood up and declared that, in their views, Sahu should pay Algu the price of the bullock as at the time of sale and purchase the bullock had no suffering or disability of any kind. The death of the bullock was a bad luck, but Algu couldn't be blamed for this. Algu became emotional. He stood up and declared that it was victory of the Panchayat and a complete justice. God is nowhere but in the voice of the Panch. Soon after, Juman came to Algu, embraced him and said, "Since the last Panchayat, I had become your enemy. Today I realize what it meant to be a Panch. A Panch has no friend, no enemy. He knows only justice. Let no one deviate from the path of justice and truth for friendship or enmity." Deviate, meaning of deviate is move away from. Algu embraced his friend and wept and his tears washed away all the dirt of misunderstanding between them. Immediately after this, Juman went to Algu, hugged him, and felt sorry for being his enemy from the time of last Panchayat. That day he had understood the importance of a punch as impartial and unbiased. He could not afford to have friends or enemies. He knows only one thing, and that is justice. Nobody should ever move away from the path of justice and truth for anything, either friendship or enmity. Algu hugged his friend and cried as if in repentance. His tears cleaned all the misunderstanding between two friends. My dear children, has your best friend ever done something you thought was wrong? What did you do then? Did you keep quiet or did you tell your friend what you thought? Anyway, I hope you liked this story and see you in the next class.